Welcome to 5 Books for Catholics, where an expert selects and explains 5 outstanding books on some aspect of Catholic life, doctrine, or culture. The Second Vatican Council, in its constitution on the sacred liturgy, Sacrosanctum Concilium, says the following: The liturgy, through which the work of our redemption is accomplished, most of all in the divine sacrifice of the Eucharist, is the outstanding means whereby the faithful may express in their lives and manifest to others the mystery of Christ and the real nature of the true Church. End of the quotation. The Second Vatican Council also teaches that the liturgy is the source and summit of the Church's activity. However, Mass attendance is in decline in many parts of the world. This must mean that many Catholics do not appreciate what occurs in the Church's ritual worship and celebration of the sacraments. Even committed Mass-goers may grow weary of humdrum celebrations. It is crucial, therefore, to understand the liturgy and appreciate it. To this end, Christoper Carstens discusses in this interview the 5 books that he recommends on the nature and significance of the sacred liturgy. Christoper Carstens is director of the Office for Sacred Worship in the Diocese of La Crosse, Wisconsin. He is a visiting faculty member at the Liturgical Institute at the University of St. Mary of the Lake in Mundelein, Illinois, and editor of the Adoremus Bulletin. He is author of A Devotional Journey into the Mass, published by Sophia, as well as Principles of Sacred Liturgy, Forming a Sacramental Vision, published by Hillenbrand Books. He and his family live in Soldiers Grove, Wisconsin. Dr. Carstens, welcome.
Father Farrell, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Theologians have often struggled to give a precise definition of the liturgy. Do you want to give it a stab?
Well, I will agree that it's a very slippery thing. Everybody talks about the liturgy, but it's hard to put a fine point on it. I think the one offered in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, right at the beginning of its section on the sacred liturgy, is the best. That the liturgy is the participation of the people of God in the work of God. The participation of the people of God in the work of God. If you drill down a little bit more on that, the people of God are all of the baptized, not simply the clergy, all of the baptized. The work of God is principally the Paschal mystery of Jesus, although the Father and the Spirit are working as well. And the means of our participation is through a sacramental ritual that is made up of signs and symbols and words and actions and all of the rest. So when me and my family show up to Mass with you, the Paschal mystery of Jesus is made present through the ritual signs and symbols, and we actively participate in that saving work.
And in your various apostolates, you deal with the Roman Rite. Similarly, most of the books you have chosen deal prevalently with the Roman Rite. To what extent are your chosen books instructive for Eastern Rite Catholics?
Oh, well, I think it's true. I've grown up as a Roman Rite Catholic, member of the Latin Church, and that's what I'm familiar with. I read about other things, and maybe I've gone to a handful of other Catholic rites. But take, for example, this definition of the liturgy, where the people of God, participate in the saving work of Jesus through a liturgical ritual. Father Farrell, that's applicable to any single rite around the world at any time. It's applicable to the Anglican use, to what was called the extraordinary form, the ordinary form, to the Maronite rite, to the Syro-Malabar rite, to Coptic celebrations. In each instance, it's a matter of God's baptized people engaging through sacramental signs this unseen reality, which is the Paschal mystery of Jesus. So that, at least, I think, is applicable across the board, even though in the specifics will start to vary.
And the first 2 books on your list could be treated as a single entry. Indeed, recently it's been published together in a single volume by Ignatius Press. The first is Romano Guardini's The Spirit of the Liturgy, published in 1918. The second is Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger's book of the same name, published in 2000. And in the latter, Cardinal Ratzinger proposes to address in the wake of Vatican II's liturgical reform the same questions as Guardini had at the end of the First World War. Cardinal Ratzinger not only takes Guardini's book as his model, but credits it with having disclosed the sense and riches of the liturgy to him. You've also edited the 7 Gifts of the Spirit of the Liturgy, Centennial Perspectives of Romani Guardini's landmark work. Why did these books top your list?
Well, I think they really set a solid foundation. They're fundamental to liturgical understanding. I think their pedigree, their history, their authors, if vouch for this too. Romano Guardini, is Pope Benedict said, sort of founded the liturgical movement in Germany at that time, and in Germany especially is what was the source of the liturgical movement in a lot of the 20th century. So I think they give real fundamentals, and Father Farrell, just if you do a cursory look of internet news or stories about the liturgy, I think this is very much needed today. There's lots of debate, and it's not unnecessary, but it's maybe on some of the finer points, and I think the bigger picture is often lost. So I think what especially, both of them, but especially Guardini does, is he lays some common characteristics or features of the spirit of the liturgy. As I wrote in the introduction to that Ignatius Press book on the 7 Gifts of the Spirit of the Liturgy, the Council Fathers spoke of the spirit of the liturgy in numerous places, right? So they had something in mind about what the spirit of the liturgy was. And I think any sort of liturgical understanding or practice or discussion or debate that doesn't see what these fundamental features of the spirit of the liturgy are is really rather thin and superficial discussion. So I think it's foundational for understanding things liturgical, the Mass, the sacraments, liturgy, the hours, anything like that.
And your third entry is a magisterial text, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Why have you selected it rather than other major magisterial documents on the liturgy, say Pius XII's Mediator Dei or Vatican II Sacrosanctum Concilium, or the Mass, this general introduction to the Roman Missal?
Yeah,
Furthermore, what parts of the Catechism are you recommending?
Yeah, well, I chose it, Father, because it was in book form, and so I was supposed to pick books. But that would be another. We'll see if this is an enjoyable podcast to your listeners. Maybe we could do another one on the 5 liturgical documents or something like that. But it's I have to confess, this was a very good and eye-opening exercise for me personally. And I liken it to, without trying to get too far afield here, when you're at home, you sort of put a mental list together of the things you need to pick up at the grocery store the next time you go there. And then you walk into the supermarket and all of a sudden you can't remember any of them. And so when you put this question to me, what 5 books would I recommend on the liturgy? I thought, I read liturgical books all the time and have done so for decades. And all of a sudden when you asked me, I couldn't think of any, or I should say they didn't come flooding into my mind like I thought they would. So as I went through this list, I chose the Catechism for a couple of reasons. One, it's magisterial. 2, in my own work as a diocesan liturgy director or teacher or author or whatever, it's been that book, that section of the Catechism that I use more than anything else. Another reason, it's beautifully written. You think, oh my goodness, a dry, boring section of the Catechism? Absolutely not. It really is written in a beautiful way. I think too, with all of these debates about the liturgy, nobody seems to quibble with, although I'm sure there are some, with the contents of the Catechism on this. So it really is shown itself to be kind of bedrock for understanding. Now, the Catechism is, probably most of the listeners know, it has these 4 principal parts or pillars. The first is on the creed. The third is on the church's moral life. And the fourth is on prayer, the Lord's Prayer. But it's the second one that is on the liturgy and the sacraments. So I guess I'm a little embarrassed to admit it. If you were to look at sort of not the spine, but the other side of my catechism, it's that second section is really well worn, and there's little tabs and sticky notes, and the first and the third and the fourth, I'm afraid to say, are not as well worn. But I would if I were trapped on a desert island and I needed a liturgy book with me, I think I'd bring along that catechism.
But you can at least justify that by saying lex sorandi, lex credendi.
Yes, certainly. Oh, there's a gem in there too, right? Which comes first? Is it the credendi or the orandi? Is it what you believe or how you pray? And Pius XII took this up in Mediator Dei in 1947. He said, you can say either one is fine, but the original formulation of that, it's let the law of prayer establish the law of belief. So there really is sort of in a certain sense, a certain real sense, a primacy to how we pray in our lives.
And you were talking about the section of the Catechism on the liturgy, and that brings us into the fourth book on your list, The Wellspring of Worship, because its author also wrote the sections of the Catechism on liturgy and prayer, Jean Carbon. In this book, he aims to help Christians overcome the separation of liturgy and Christian life. What lessons can we draw from him in this regard?
Well, I think when this too, true confession this time here. It had been a little while since I had read Wellspring of Worship. I knew that it was great, and I knew it was very formative in my own thinking. And I thought, well, if I need to talk about this, I need to brush up. And so I've been rereading parts of it in preparation for this podcast, and was just so beautifully written. And I sort of came to see how, even though I didn't remember certain sections of it, how maybe by osmosis or something like that, it's really formed how I think, and how I didn't see as explicit the connections between him and this part in the liturgy and the catechism. But what the Carbon book does, again, this is liturgy from 35,000 feet. This is big picture vision of the liturgy. Or if I can use another sort of analogy, we talk about losing the forest for the trees. Well, this is about the liturgical forest. It's a very big picture of what the liturgy is. And its first section is about what is the mystery? What is the real true content that goes on when you celebrate Mass or go to confession or pray evening prayer? And it's Trinitarian in its essence. So this is, again, when it seems like most of my day is about, what color vestments are we going to wear? Or, what's the best way to do the blessing of throats on the Feast of St. Blaise when we have so many people and things like that? Or, should we celebrate or not celebrate Ad Orient? Things like that. These are important questions, and I don't mean that they're not. But what the Carbon book does for us is it just opens our eyes to the enormity of the reality of the liturgy, the action of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in the world and creation and the economy of salvation that is present there. This mystery gets sacramentalized or symbolized or ritualized in things that human beings can see, smell, taste, touch, or hear. These are the sacramental signs that compose the rite. And then ideally, this transforms us so that we become divinized. We become transformed and live sort of according to the mystery, when we're in our families, in our workplaces, during our entertainment and the rest. So I was very happy to pick up this book and read it again.
And sometimes it's said that Jesuits are not into liturgy and rubrics. Proof to the contrary is your fifth book, Josef Andreas Jungmann's definitive 2-volume historical study, The Mass of the Roman Rite. To what extent can his study help us understand the new order of the Mass and not just the Mass, the rite of the Mass as it was celebrated in the Roman Rite up until Vatican II?
Sort of what I said before, Father Dominic, is, what books should make this list? And I kind of hemmed and hawed about whether I should put this on here because I've never actually read it. No. Let me qualify that. I've never sat down and read it from cover to cover.
Yeah.
I have volume 1 in my hands here, and it goes to about page 485. So that's the first volume, and the second is about the same. So it's not it's not a cozy up to the fireplace evening read with a glass of sherry type of book, but it seems to me it's an invaluable resource to have at hand. If you and these historical questions, to my mind, are just among the most difficult ones. And I don't know if this is a matter of history generally or liturgical history in particular. But it seems that I can't seem to find two historians that agree on many points. But still, this book remains by Jungmann. So he started to write this when the Nazi occupation of Austria closed down the university he was teaching at, and he took the war years to write this book. He was apparently more of a catechist than he was an historian, but he took this time during the war to write the Mass of the Roman Rite, and it became a truly influential book for the liturgical movement. Maybe not necessarily always in a good way. Somebody like Cardinal Ratzinger would go on to say that maybe too much emphasis was placed on historical research, and maybe not enough given to sort of like, he didn't put it this way, but like people in parishes and pastors and things like that. Too much nod was given to the academic and to the historical. So this book is important, I find, for one, its place in the liturgical movement and also in the reform and restoration of the rites, which we celebrate today. But two, it stood the test of time, even if certain elements, which he admits in the introduction, come to be changed or understood in a different way, different documents show themselves to be different. It's still, I think, the resource book that one would turn to find historical information on the Mass's development.
Thank you for listening. To read or listen to the rest of this interview and gain full access to our archive, visit 5booksforcatholics.com and become a premium subscriber. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and give it a top rating on the platform of your choice. That way more people can discover it. You can also support the podcast and help us produce more interviews like this one by making a one-off donation via the link given in the show notes. As little as $1, £1, or €1 can help and will be greatly appreciated. Thank you once again, and God bless.